Hey, what's up, good people? Look what I have here. Yep. So, new DSM-5 TR version. We're gonna break it down. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about pretty much all the updates. Hey, what's going on, good people? It's your boy James Harris, founder of a movement called Mental Health, which focuses on men's overall wellness, our mental health, physical health, and of course, our emotional health. And I'm also the author of a book called Man Just Express Yourself, which is an interactive planner guide for boys and men to better express themselves. I definitely appreciate all my parents who went on and got this copy of a book for their sons, their young teens. Appreciate all my spouses who got this tool for their husbands, their partners, doing these exercises over dinner and date night. I definitely appreciate that. Salute to my fellow clinicians who got this in the lobby for intervention purposes or a conversation starter. I'm thankful. Praises to you too, my fellows, for going on and get this book to make changes in certain areas of your life. Definitely appreciate that. If you want a copy of the book, definitely go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, pretty much anywhere books are sold, including my website. And while you're on my website, be sure to grab my board game, Cheesy Dates, which is an interactive board game for couples, adult game nights, your girls' nights, your boys' nights. Pretty much interactive. Add some spontaneity back into your dates and to ask those tough questions that you should ask throughout your relationship, whether the beginning, current, or just future questions that you want to ask a potential partner. So if you're new here, be sure to like, share, subscribe. I definitely appreciate you assisting me in getting monetized. We made it over the hump. I don't take it for granted. I definitely appreciate you coming back time after time, liking, sharing, putting in groups and all that. So for my clinicians out there, if we had to dive into this DSM-5 TR version, just a heads up, of course, the DSM-5 TR has been updated in March 2022, which is a good thing. So it's different, of course, diagnostic criteria and certain taxonomy has been changed within this based from the APA, of course. Codes for clinicians have been altered, which improve the insurance claims that we can process. They wanted to rush us to get those diagnoses immediately, and we haven't even built a rapport with clients. But this right here, I think this version will assist with that. Some of the changes too. And also, while we're talking about the changes, some of the changes in here are for the good, I think. So it's addressing more cultural issues, racial issues, of course, different ethnic factors. And also, it's a couple of gender identity and gender inclusivity going on in here. So this DSM-5 TR version has definitely been update, an increase. I mean, I'm not sure why they didn't just make it DSM-5 6, but we're gonna dive into all that. So as we know, of course, the stigma around mental health continues to fade, which is a good thing in the field itself. But of course, some people still don't think it's for the better. I hope it's for the better, and hope it's just not for a trend. Hoping not people just jumping on the bandwagon. Hopefully, people are serious about their overall wellness, which includes mental health. So if we want to dive into it and talk about what's new with the DSM-5 TR version, of course, it has redefined some of the diagnostic criteria codes, which is, I'm going to break that down shortly. This makes it better to improve how mental health professionals, of course, work with different clients and how they can file insurance claims. Like I said, previously the insurance company wanted you to make that, within a certain window, but now we got certain diagnoses that will assist with those claims. For different clients, worse symptoms are not fully represented in the present DSM-5. So this starts the treatment plan in a more thoroughly diagnosed potentially with this new version of the DSM-5 TR. And one of those diagnoses that is a good thing to me personally would be prolonged grief disorder. The DSM-5 TR adds different symptoms associated with prolonged grief disorder to the list of diagnostic criteria. So now clinicians can make a formal diagnosis for those who have faced difficulty coping with the loss for an extended period of time. And if you, of course, you've been here for a while, so it's a previous video on grief on my page, so be sure to check that out. I break down the 5 stages of grief, and of course you'll know now why the prolonged grief disorder is beneficial, because everybody grieves differently. It's no set grieving process that one can have in comparison to another client. So of course, there's some controversy among clinicians when it comes to having clients' experiences and loss and associated with mental health disorders, but that's another story. But I definitely think prolonged grief disorder is a beneficial diagnosis. So according to the DSM-5-TR, the diagnostic criteria for prolonged grief disorder is pretty much a persistent grief response for a duration of a period longer than 12 months, 6 months within a child, symptoms that significantly interrupt a person's day-to-day functioning. Experience cannot be attributed to another condition. So, those other conditions where grief may look like major depressive mood disorder or PTSD. So, you can have prolonged grief disorder without having those two symptoms as well. Another change was unspecified mood disorder. So, if you remember, the DSM-5 removed unspecified mood disorder as a diagnosis back in when was the last version? 2013, I believe. That you probably got the purple diagnosed DSM-5, the previous one. So, which means that clinicians had to diagnose their clients with a specific mood disorder instead. Of course, we know what those are. But unspecified mood disorder has been reinstated to provide diagnostics to someone worse, of course, who's presenting with different fit neatly under the bipolar disorder or the depressive mood disorder. So this right here is a beneficial tool as well. Unspecified mood disorder is definitely will help a lot of clients because you don't want to overuse certain diagnoses, whether that is a bipolar one or a depressive one. Unspecified mood disorder. Distinguish between bipolar disorder and depressive disorder can definitely take time. And we also know that those symptoms can co-occur with bipolar disorders and not always recognizable at the first time you meet somebody. So unspecified mood disorder is definitely a good one that they added. So the DSM-5-TR reinstates unspecified mood disorder, which will allow, of course, us as clinicians more time to observe a client and their symptoms to get a more accurate diagnosis. So again, that it can probably escalate to PTSD or a bipolar one, but for right now, let's observe and see. So unspecified mood disorder would definitely fit. Another one that they added, which is a big one, and doing biopsychosocials, I definitely used to have issues with this, non-suicidal self-harm. Because, of course, you probably got those people who self-harm or, hurt themselves to release or get that pleasure from it, but not necessarily be suicidal. So the DSM-5-TR has added self-harm without the presence of suicidality, which is in its list of diagnoses. Not everyone who engages in self-harm may do so with the intent to end their own life. Lumping it into suicidality can blur those assessment lines, of course, by some clinicians. It's good to have a differentiate with those because many people who self-harm without the intentions of suicide can now be in a separate criteria, which again is unfortunate. And if you've done biopsychosocials or different assessments, it's always that self-harm question. And then, of course, it's always linked to the suicide. But again, some people might not be suicidal. They just had a moment or they just want to have a release. So, of course, some do it to release stress, among other reasons. The intent to have this injury, which makes it easier to track behaviors for us as to assess different risks. So I definitely agree that it should be in here. In addition, different diagnostic codes for suicide behaviors without the presence of another mental health diagnoses have been included in this new update as well. So, like I said earlier, it's an emphasis on culture, race, ethnicity, and of course, gender-inclusive language. So the DSM-5-TR includes changes to its language around gender and gender identity to help reduce the stigma that clarify that the aspects of these people are not selected by choice. This includes the more accurate changes to where society is now migrating to, because everyone should be included. So desired gender to experience gender, which is a good thing. Cross-sex medical procedures to gender-affirming medical procedures. Natal male to natal female to, of course, individuals assigned male, female at birth, which is a good thing. So if you're familiar, it's so many cases out right now, legislation-wise, that are affecting the communities of those of the LGBTQ+. So, this is a good thing that it was recognized and put in here. And when it comes to the focus on race and discrimination, excuse me, They should definitely talk about social norms and cultural norms and how they're going to be different depending on race and depending on where you live. And, it's definitely important in identifying those things. So the previous evidence base didn't include many black and brown people. So it's a huge years late, but of course it's here now. And of course, evidence base is another time for studies of white people because, again, a lot of our people, black and brown people, weren't included in those evidence-based studies. So I'm glad this new DSM-5 has now taken into account the says, the voices, the participation of black and brown people. Of course, this will likely incorporate further changes, specifically around how our social norms, how our social cultural status, our gender disorder status, how they intersect among each other. The goal is, of course, to enable the class to be seen within a holistic framing opposed to just linking them to a whole group of people who didn't even identify with them realistically. So revisions, of course, to the pre-existing diagnoses. One of the ones up top will be autism, ASD, autism spectrum. The DSM-5-TR changed part of its criterion from a manifestation by the following to as manifested by the following to improve the intent to clarify the wording. Of course, gender dysphoria is a language that has been updated to more culturally sensitive and inclusion. For example, desired gender is, has been updated to, of course, experienced gender. People are living who they are. And, of course, cross-sex hormone treatment was changed to gender-affirming hormone treatment, gender-affirming surgeries, gender-affirming experiences, which is a good thing. So I'm glad they were able to do that because, again, like I said, the LGBT plus community are going through so many changes, not just on a local level, but, of course, in schools and in Congress and so many other places. So what used to be called social phobia has now completely become the term social anxiety disorder due to its adaptation within the field, which is good. So social anxiety disorder and social phobia. So social anxiety disorder is now the term for social phobia. Language alterations. The new DSM-5-TR revises language in response to concerns that the mental health field regarding race, ethnicity, difference, discrimination. So racialized is used instead of race or racial to highlight the social constructs of nature of different race. Ethno-racial is a term that's used in there as well to denote that the U.S. Census categories such as Hispanics, white, African Americans, and combined ethnics of racial identifiers are included. So minority and non-whites are now avoided in the text because they describe a social group in relations to the majority, a practice to tend to perpetuate societal hierarchies. So, of course, now minority and non-whites are avoided within this thing. So they're no longer considered a majority. Latinx, which is, of course, Latina with the X on the end, is a term used to place of Latino and Latina to promote gender inclusive terminology. The term Caucasian is not being used because it's based on the obsolete and erroneous views that the geographic origin of pan-Europeans ethnicities. So in the new DSM-5-TR, it updates criteria to be more precise for diagnosing children with autism spectrum, disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and prolonged grief disorder. We already talked about those things, so I'm not going to beat them over the head, but I definitely encourage you to get your own DSM-5, skim through it. Of course, share this video in different groups and stuff like that because one of your fellow clinicians may need this update and don't want to read tons of pages, so I'm doing the work for you. So if you want to ask why these changes in the DSM-5-T are important, well, the diagnoses are definitions of these different disorders are shaped by our culture, which means we are forever changing. So, of course, these books should forever change. Again, I think it should have been 6 opposed to TR, but I'm glad it is. It's here now, so definitely get it. It's expensive. It costs more than the previous DSM-5s that I had the DSM-5, and I think years ago when I entered the field, it was the DSM-4. So I had the DSM-4, DSM-5, and the DSM-5 now TR. So, also, as our society world becomes more aware of our limitations, we can change and begin to expand our ideas of definition to include pretty much everybody. Additionally, how we see diagnosis today may differ from how we once perceived it, which is a good thing. Again, especially surrounding the gender, surrounding the culture, those things are definitely important. For example, depression was once seen as a woman's disease. Y'all heard me talk about that many times. Of course, this inherently creates barriers for men and non-binary people to feel like they can associate or relate with this disorder. I heard all the time from athletes, I can't be depressed, that's for cheerleaders. Bro, come on. You can have depression. How long would it continue to use the words like disorder or illness? I mean, that's up in the air. Hopefully we can get away from that or come to terms with another inclusive definition or words being used. How long will we refer or define people by their mental illness or mental health issues? I don't know that either. So hopefully we can continue to grow within it. How will our definitions on grief, depression, autism change as the more people begin to open up and talk about their struggles? Hopefully that is a good thing. The more and more, I guess, celebrities or socialites or athletes talk about it, it makes more people who work in 9 to 5 or in the community feel like they are relatable and they can talk about it as well. So, of course, we got to identify the rise issue of self-diagnosis. You know, thanks to social media, TikTok, IG, and all those, a lot of people overuse terms or use terms where they don't fit, like antisocial. That's a psychological disorder opposed to being not talking to people, of course. And then, of course, you got a lot of people saying they're depressed or whatever and not really depressed. So, of course, you know, we got to get away from those self-diagnoses. See a real therapist if you want real accurate information. This is amazing and, of course, progress, step in the right direction. Giving people have multiple platforms to talk about their mental health, such as, again, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, social media outlets. All of these things are important, but it also opens the door for people to make false diagnoses or the incorrect diagnoses. So definitely be careful where you can get the information from. Finally, while the DSM-5 has made somewhat wonderful progress to being culturally sensitive, the update to me has been long overdue. I'm glad it's finally here, but of course we got to continue to put pressure on the APA, so many other organizations to continue to do the work. Given that our culture and society will continue to grow and change and be accepting of all people is definitely important. So if you had to take anything away from this long video that I've done, the DSM-5 acknowledges how race, discrimination, and historically have impacted mental health care, and steps to change to be more inclusive with all people of color, with all genders, and people who identify differently. But the barriers, of course, to qualified mental health skilled professionals, such as cost factors, health insurance, not a lot of claims were being accepted from insurance companies based on Russian diagnoses. So now we can see a difference in that because we got that prolonged grief disorder. We got unspecified mood disorder. So you can have a little bit ease while you're doing your biopsychosocials, while you're doing, continue to build rapport and those things like that. So if you got any questions, be sure to hit me up, www.mentoheal.com, mentoheal.com. I definitely appreciate your time. I'll catch you on the next one.